Talk of a so-called Red October plot began last month as disclosed by President Duterte himself during his tete-a-tete with Chief Legal Counsel Sal Panelo. It was there where he bared the alleged plans of his critics, members of the opposition, and now even some university students to take his government down. The Armed Forces of the Philippines is currently looking into reports that some university students are being recruited to join the Red October plot. That being said, the AFP may monitor the actual activities within the said schools. Many, however, are against the AFP going to this extent. So tonight we take this issue to 4. Hello, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Square Off Season 16, The Firm Debates. The so-called Red October plot. Like a page from a suspense thriller, there are reportedly plans for a broad coalition of communist rebels and the president's critics to remove him from office. The military earlier warned the NPA will launch simultaneous attacks in various military detachments and police outposts on October 17th.
This Red October, sinimula nila last year pa yan. And yes. And itong CPP and PA, they would use and make alliances with other forces, including political forces, to oust the president. Well, sabay-sabay kasi yung labor sector, student sector, magkakaroon ng malaking rally, and then the CPP will exploit the situation.
The military had identified 18 colleges and universities where communists are allegedly recruiting students to overthrow the government.
I have the text ng isang magulang na sabi na pakitingnan nito para silang may brainwash. And then apparently, ang 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, nagkaroon ng film showing pertaining yung ng dictatorship. And then later on, they really, they dramatize yung mga brutality sa military.
Claim educators, filmmakers, and artists deny.
Hindi na kailangan talaga ng destabilization plot para kay Duterte dahil galit na ang sambayan ng Pilipino. Pareho lang po ang galawan ni Duterte kay President Marcos noon. Parehong gumagawa ng mga desperadong mga taktika upang i-justify ang paglabag sa ating mga karapatang pantao.
They have an ulterior motive to create something. Maybe they want to round up students and anyone who is an oppositionist at this stage.
The Commission on Human Rights also condemns the red tagging of schools, which it says endangers students and emboldens the military to suppress the basic rights and freedoms of Filipinos. So, should the Armed Forces of the Philippines be allowed to monitor student activities in universities tagged in the supposed Red October plot? Arguing for the affirmative side is St. Louis University. All the way from the summer capital of the Philippines, Baguio City, the contenders from St. Louis University.
I love reading books, both fiction and non-fiction, as well as current events. It encourages me to know more about the world. I took up law because I want to expand my knowledge. I want to learn more about the law. I think lawyering is an excellent career choice. It would open many options for me, and it would put me in a position where I could be of greater service to others.
I would describe myself as someone who's very energetic and as someone who finds ways even when the times are really hard. I wanted to be an agent of justice. I guess taking up law was the best option and the best choice to do so. I've seen a lot of people who are not able to defend themselves, and and I want to help those people.
I'm naturally a competitor. If I'm really into something that I love or I want to do, then I really give my best. But it doesn't mean that I have to trample other people's talents as well. I took up law because I wanted to give voices to people and defend their best interests in court. I want to give them a space in the democratic process.
Team St. Louis University, ethical, determined, talented. And taking on the negative side is the University of Perpetual Help. From the institution guided by the principles of aspirations and hope, leadership and determination, the future lawyers of University of Perpetual Help System Delta.
I am a graduate of accountancy and practicing that same profession right now. As a person, I would say I'm passionate, but I'm also very distinctively quiet. I tend to bottle things up and think it through my head before I even say anything about certain issues. I'm very much interested with the work of justice and peace. I probably would go into certain advocacies, especially for women.
I'm mainly someone who tends to enjoy a lot. I make the most out of the things that I do, and of course, I exhaust every effort that I can give on that task also at hand. I entered law school because I was always told that I was very argumentative. It has been something that stuck to me, and now it became part of my aspiration.
I'm quiet, shy, timid, but when approached, I do let loose of myself. I took up law because I want to help people who suffer from injustices and those who were oppressed, and I want to help people who were convicted wrongly. So I want to defend them with their rights or their entitlement to their rights.
Team University of Perpetual Help System Delta. Courageous, determined, strong. Let's now meet our distinguished judges. First off, we have attorney Mohammed Muqtadir Estrella, an associate at the VNA law firm. Next, we have attorney Marjorie Uyenko Nolasco, managing partner of the Nolasco and Associates Law Offices. She's also a lecturer at the Philippine Judicial Academy. And presiding as our chief adjudicator this evening is Judge Selma Palacio Alaras from the Regional Trial Court Branch 62 in Makati City. We're using a modified Oregon-Oxford format. The debate is between two sides, the affirmative and the negative, with 3 members each. Each debater from the affirmative side argues the necessity, beneficiality, and practicability of the proposition, while the counterpart debaters on the negative side oppose these arguments. Each debater is given 4 minutes to deliver a constructive speech and rebut the previous argument. Each debater is given 2 minutes to interpolate or cross-examine the opposing debater. Only categorical questions may be asked. Each of the judges may ask 1 question of each speaker within that speaker's time limit. The judges score each team in terms of manner, matter, and interpolation. The team with a higher score from each judge gets a point. The team with the most number of points wins the debate. The chief adjudicator rules in the event of ties, objections, or contestations. This week's proposition, let it be resolved that the armed forces of the Philippines may be allowed to monitor the activities of students inside various universities where recruitment for the alleged Red October plot is reportedly taking place. First up, for the affirmative side, we have Val. Val, you've got 4 minutes to tell us why the military should be allowed to monitor the activities in the universities linked to the Red October ouster plot against the president.
Josephine Lapira of the Batangas 15, Guilher Cadano, Rendel Cagula are just some of the many students who became victims of the NPA-AFP clash. Everyone, good evening. The NPA has resorted to the recruitment of students, utilizing the aroused, organized, mobilized scheme. This is a conspiracy to overthrow the Duterte administration in said Red October plot. Let me be very clear that this debate will not dwell on the veracity, truthfulness, and accuracy of the Red October plot. Otherwise, this debate will become a battle of facts. The legal issue to be resolved in this debate is the legality and the validity of the monitoring to be conducted by the AFP. Thus, SLU would like to forward a multi-sectoral policy. DepEd and CHED will be involved. Presently, the enclosure to DepEd Memorandum Order No. 221 Series of 2013 prescribes the guidelines to be followed by the AFP when conducting activities within school premises, which are as follows. 1. Prior to any AFP activity in schools, they shall seek the express and written permission of the school administration, the LGUs concerned, and the appropriate DepEd offices. 2. The activities shall be non-combatant in nature. Next, schools and parents will be involved. They are primarily responsible in the rearing of the youth for civic efficiency and the development of moral character. We seek their coordination and understanding in these times where the lives and the security of their students or children is of paramount importance. CHR will be involved. They will act as watchdogs and safety nets against human rights violations. AFP will be involved. The AFP is the protector of the people and the state. Section 4, Article 2 of the Constitution. Thus, they are the proper bodies to conduct the monitoring. Now to the extent of the monitoring. The AFP shall utilize the most benign methods in conducting monitoring activities in schools. This includes compliance reports from schools or voluntary interviews of school personnel and students, wherein relevant information about the Red October plot will be disclosed. Remember, the AFP is not monitoring the students per se. They are monitoring the insurgents or rebels who have infiltrated our schools. Now to my argument.
Will there be prior consultation with the CHR, the DepEd, and the other relevant government agencies before determining which schools the AFP will be doing a monitoring on?
Yes, Your Honor. This is very clear under the department order that it is multi-sectoral in nature, which means that these governmental bodies shall work together in the protection of the youth and the students. Now on to my argument. Presence of clear and present danger. What will happen in the Red October plot? This is a conspiracy perpetrated by the insurgents. They will mobilize the students to overthrow the president. Said insurgents will utilize focused military operations, and it can become violent and will result to the deaths of many, including students who are recruited by the NPA as youth militants. Remember the nature of the crime of rebellion, Your Honors. Even the proposal, even the conspiracy to commit rebellion is punishable. That's because rebellion does not happen in one swoop. It is an underground process. That's why it necessitates monitoring to verify the same. These are crimes against public order. David versus Arroyo states that an ouster presents a clear and present danger to the state and especially to the Constitution we have sworn to protect and preserve. If students feel dissent towards the government, then utilize the democratic processes enshrined in the Constitution. Shout their cries and concerns to our courts, which uphold the values of due process and equal protection. Not to the NPA, Your Honor. Thank you.
2 minutes for the cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Harley.
Good afternoon. Are you familiar with the DOJ?
Yes, I am.
What about the National Security Council?
I am also familiar with that.
All right. And what about the National Intelligence Coordinating Agencies?
Yes.
All right. Do you agree that there is no other way to monitor the students' activities other than with the help of the AFP?
The AFP is the best one because they are the protector of the people and the state, and they are responsible for the repression of internal subversion.
Okay.
So they are the proper bodies to conduct the monitoring.
All right. Thank you for that. And are you aware that this is also a scope of the PNP?
It could
Or a
be.
function of the PNP?
It could be, but the AFP is better equipped
No, just
or
say
more
yes or no.
competent
Just
to
yes or no.
monitor the activities.
Just yes or no. Okay. Are you aware that the DOJ, NSC, and ICA are also vested with a function to monitor or do surveillance?
They are also given the power to
Yes or no?
monitor. Yes.
Okay. Is Red October exclusively for students?
No, but
Yes or
the
no?
capital is
Yes
in
or
the
no?
students.
Just yes or no, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Are you familiar with the meaning of monitoring, which is to supervise, to check, or to watch?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that in David versus Arroyo, there were overt acts, right?
There were allegations.
Allegations. But are you aware that there were overt acts on that case by the Magda law?
In this case, there are
Yes
also...
or no? Yes or no, Mr. Speaker?
It was not very
Yes
clear
or no,
in that
Mr.
case. The petitioner
Yes or no, Mr. Speaker? Are there overt acts by the Magda law?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware that in this case there are none?
There are overt acts by the
yes or no,
NPA.
Mr. Speaker?
NPA has a history of violence.
Yes or no, Mr.
And it
Speaker?
is
No,
very
just yes or
clear
no,
that
Mr.
the
Speaker?
students have been
Just yes or
recruited
no,
by the
Mr.
NPA.
Speaker?
Josephine Lapira
No, yes or no,
is a
Mr.
student.
Speaker? I'm asking if are you aware?
Harley, you've got 4 minutes now to advance your argument on why the armed forces of the Philippines should not be allowed to monitor the universities linked to the alleged Red October plot.
Good afternoon. Civil authority is at all times supreme over the military. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon once again. We from the negative side firmly believes that the armed forces of the Philippines should not be allowed to monitor student activities of students inside various universities where recruitment for the alleged Red October plot reportedly happens. Allow me to elaborate. First, Red October plot are mere allegations that are not even validated. Hence, there is no valid ground for the AFP to monitor. Last October 2, 2018, AFP Chief of Staff General Carlito Galvez Jr. disclosed that 10 schools linked to Red October. One of these schools is Caloocan City College. However, 2 days later, CHED and Caloocan City Mayor Oscar Malapitan said there is no such institution. To monitor student activities based on an unverified source would endanger our students, as this would curtail their rights without any legal ground. Also, given the huge intelligence our security agencies have, it is impossible for them to commit mistakes this grave. Second, the AFP cannot interfere with a civilian life without the President calling for them as part of President's emergency power under Article 7, Section 18. However, this power is not absolute. It can only be used by the President to prevent or suppress lawless violence, invasion, or rebellion. In this matter, there is no lawless violence, invasion, or rebellion. May I just remind everyone of the case of People versus Ferrer. The Anti-Subversion Act was upheld. However, such act must be accompanied with overt acts, or becoming a member of the CPP-NPA is not illegal per se, but it must be accompanied with overt acts to be considered as a rebellion. In Lagman versus Medialdea, the court held that the president may use this power as long as he acts within permissible constitutional boundaries or in a manner not constituting grave abuse of discretion. Lastly, granting arguendo that monitoring is necessary, what would be the parameters or extent of their supervision? Still, even if the state would limit its parameters, it would still ripen into a fishing expedition by the AFP. We must always bear in mind that even though the governmental purpose be legitimate and substantial, the purpose cannot be pursued by means that broadly stifle fundamental personal liberties when the end can be more narrowly achieved. The end clearly does not justify the means. Our Constitution itself was created to limit the power of the state and to safeguard us from arbitrary intrusion. Thus, the AFP must not be allowed to monitor student activities in universities for the alleged Red October plot. Thank you.
2 minutes for the cross-examination.
Good evening, Harley.
Good evening.
Let's talk about criminal law. Conspiracy and inciting to commit sedition are punishable.
Yes, that's correct.
Article 141 and 142 of RTC.
Yes.
Conspiracy and proposal to commit rebellion is punishable.
That is correct, yes.
An Austria is taking up arms against the government.
Yes.
The Red October plot is a conspiracy by the NPA to oust Duterte.
No.
Yes, it is.
No.
Therefore, it is unlawful and we do not want students to
No.
participate
What
in
is your
such
question,
unlawful
Mr. Speaker?
activities.
Mr. Interpolator.
Let us now go to the questions about constitutional law and democratic processes.
Okay.
You have read the preamble of the Constitution.
Yes.
We have sworn as Filipino citizens to protect the Constitution.
Yes.
The senatorial election is next year.
Yes.
We have the right to suffrage.
Yes.
If we are not happy about the present administration, then we don't re-elect the leaders.
Yes.
This is a democratic process.
How is this a democratic process when you're trying to offer...
Voting is legal. Voting is legal.
Yes.
We have to respect that. We take the democratic route, not the unlawful one perpetrated by the NPA. And let me just clarify this.
No,
You
what
said
is your
that
question?
the allegations
No, what
were-
is your question,
Red October
Mr.
allegations is
No,
unverified.
what are your questions, Mr. Speaker?
Red October allegations are unverified.
Yes.
That's why we have to monitor to verify them. No further
But
questions.
what are... Thank you.
Second affirmative speaker, Niko, you've got 4 minutes to tell us why it would be beneficial to allow the military to monitor the activities of students inside universities where recruitment for the alleged Red October plot supposedly occurs.
Your Honors, a nation is a living organism and the government is its heart. Every nation has the right to exist and to protect and conserve its existence. All citizens must contribute then to the preservation of the nation and its government. Your Honors, St. Louis University submits that monitoring of activities of students is beneficial to first, to the preservation of our democratic processes, and second, to the protection of the youth and schools as zones of peace and not subject to armed conflict. A negative side tried to propose a while ago that this should not happen because the Red October plot is something that is founded on mere allegation. But we have to remember, Your Honors, the nature of rebellion and the nature of an ouster plot. These are highly secretive and organized forms of crimes, Your Honors. We have to monitor these activities in order to prevent such. We don't want this to ripen to actual rebellion because there will be collateral damages. We need to protect the youth in order for them not to join in the first place. And besides, David versus Arroyo already said that even mere allegations of these ouster plots is a valid ground for the president to declare such proclamations. Hence, it is the submission of affirmative side that monitoring is still beneficial in order to prevent such irreversible damage. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, Your Honors, provides that the armed forces is a protector of the state and the people, and that its goal is to secure the sovereignty of the state and the people's ideals and aspirations. The attack to fundamental constitutional processes is an attack to the collective will of the people. An ouster plot of a duly constituted government outside what is permissible is a blatant disrespect to the right of the people to organize their own government by virtue of election, and a disregard to legal mechanisms of accountability, which Val already mentioned a while ago. The AFP must then act against this ouster plot. The monitoring is not against the spirit of dissent and criticism, but sets a measure to inculcate that speech and assembly itself has certain consequences. The moment it becomes unlawful, Your Honors, monitoring becomes a duty in order to benefit the Constitution. Secondly, this is beneficial because we inculcate to the youth under Article 2, Section 13, its role in nation building. While the case of U.S. Bush versus Bustos asserts that dissent and the right to peace of the assembled is a value in a republican state, this is something that's not absolute. U.S. versus Schenck and People versus Perez says that the exercise of these rights must not be an avenue to destroy constitutional processes through violent means. We do not want dissent resonating from gunshots, Your Honors, from organized groups who think that expression. Yes, Your Honor.
By monitoring, you mean you will have uniformed armed personnel inside schools?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. First speaker already mentioned a while ago the parameters before monitoring can happen. The AFP must not conduct monitor in a combatant manner, but rather will secure the consent of concerned school officials if they want to do so. Thirdly, schools must be neutral grounds of peace. Schools cannot be zones of peace when they are tainted with conflict propaganda. Hence, the most beneficial way to neutralize it is through monitoring of student activities that are illegal and tend to coerce participation in armed conflict and ouster plots. Your Honors, they are our youth, not the NPAs. We do not want to see them with AK-47s. We do not want to see them being killed in certain skirmishes and certain armed conflicts. No matter how flawed our system may be, Your Honors, we still believe in the youth who shall fix it. Let us not miss the chance. Thanks.
2 minutes for the cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. You said that the youth, it is a way to inculcate to the youth nationalism and patriotism.
Yes.
Okay. So part of nationalism and patriotism is having uniform way of thinking.
No, but we still celebrate
Isn't it
dissent on our
true
side.
that the Red October plot actually started with a film showing?
Yes, but we still
And therefore,
celebrate film
actually, it's
showings.
the AFP's contention that the youth can be brainwashed.
That's why
In
Val
saying
laid
that,
down
isn't
certain
it true also
propositions.
that by saying that the youth can be brainwashed, what you said that the youth is the hope of the country, you're actually not believing it, right?
The thing, Ms. Speaker, is that when elements of insurgent groups go and penetrate
Does that
these
mean,
schools,
no, it's a yes
brainwashing
or no
happens.
question, Mike. It's
What's
a
your
yes or
question
no
again?
question. Does that mean that the youth cannot be trusted?
No, I'm not saying that.
Then why, if there is another way to do the to do away with the recruitment of the CPP and PA in the schools, why the need for monitoring?
There's still a need for monitoring because we cannot monitor
Actually,
insurgents who are
isn't it true
recruiting.
that there are other ways that the AFP have become successful in mitigating the rebellion or the ouster of a government?
No, because if
In fact,
there
I'm sorry,
are really
it's
other
a yes
ways.
or no question. In fact,
No,
in June
they did
25,
not.
2018 of this year, the AFP themselves said that they are successful in their operations against the NPA by providing a holistic approach in the issue of dissent.
But they still
Are you
cannot-
aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware of that. But they cannot prevent recruitment in schools
But
or honors.
recruitment
That's
in-
why NPA is still
I'm sorry,
alive
that's a
up to
yes or
now.
no question.
It's not effective.
How can you say that it's not effective when the AFP themselves actually said it?
Because NPA is still here, and since 1968, they're still growing.
Is it not true that because of those efforts, there were...
Okay, Maricel, you've got 4 minutes now to tell us why it would not be in the country's best interest to have the AFP monitor the universities linked to the alleged Red October plot.
Ang kabataan ng pag-asa ng bayan. We believe in this value so much that we placed it in our constitution as part of the state policies of the government. The state recognizes the vital role of the youth in nation building. It shall inculcate in the youth patriotism and nationalism and encourage their involvement in public and civic affairs. That's from Article 2, Section 13. The failure of the government to establish the parameters by which they will conduct their monitoring, the nature and type of activities to be involved, the extent of the involvement, the length of time for this operation, and how information from this monitoring would be used poses a risk to the constitutionally protected rights of academic freedom and freedom of expression. In this regard, the proposed benefits of allowing the AFP to monitor the activities of the students far outweigh the risk and danger it presents. Schools for higher learnings are a crucible of differing opinions and ideas presented to students that they may have a more complete outlook of the world to which they will be thrown into. We don't see Catholic universities not teach about theory of evolution. We don't see universities not teach about the ideologies of socialism. Information needs to be complete. It is therefore very much a practice in development of the youth for critical thinking. It is very much a part of the mandate of universities and colleges to encourage critical and creative thought.
May I go back to what you said earlier? You commented about the lack of parameters, consultation, etc. So once these concerns are properly addressed, will you now consider the monitoring by the AFP with together with the other government agencies to be beneficial now to the
Still no, because what we're saying is that even with those parameters and even with what consultation might happen, there are other venues and there are other ways of procuring or being able to address this issue. In fact, in studies in South Africa, there have been studies that concluded that the presence of military, instead of providing security, actually provided insecurity and a feeling of threat among the students.
Don't you think this is a proper exercise of police power?
Proper exercise of police power would entail that there should be lawful means. And as far as the first speaker have already mentioned, the AFP cannot, on their own, just intervene with civilian life without the calling out powers of the president, which is within the parameters of the Constitution as well. Also, the means and the method taken should be justified by the purpose by which it wants to address. It would make a mockery of academic freedom as provided by Justice Frankfurter in Sweezy versus New Hampshire if there is a knowing fear on the part of those competent to contribute with their knowledge gained within years of study and research that what they say or what they write, if displeasing to the powers that be, could be visited with retribution. Also, the proposed monitoring of school activities threaten the constitutionally protected right of freedom of expression. The mere presence of the AFP in the schools can create a restraint on the students and teachers alike to voice out their opinions and criticisms, lest it might be perceived as anti-government and thus invite the wrath, vengeance of the subject of criticism.
2 minutes for the cross-examination.
Hello. Let's go to factual issues. You said a while ago that there is no law or there is no presidential proclamation that invokes this power, correct?
I did not say that.
You
I
said
think you
that. Are
misread.
you aware of Proclamation number 55? Yes or no?
I'm sure you'll tell me about it.
Proclamation number 55 was proclaimed by Duterte declaring the Philippines under state of national emergency because of communist insurgency. Are you aware of a Plan Kapayapaan?
I'm sure you'll tell me.
A Plan Kapayapaan is AFP's anti-insurgency program. Are you aware
And how
of
is that relevant to the discussion?
I'll lead you to that. Are you aware of Memorandum Order number 22 series of 2013?
That's 2013.
That sets guidelines when AFP enters schools. So the parameters that you're problematizing is something that's answered already by affirmative side. Let's talk about rights. Is freedom of speech absolute?
Yes.
No, it's not, because it must bow down to
No,
national
but the thing
security.
is that
that is Escuelas
In
versus
relation
people.
to what we're talking about right
It's my
now,
time,
it
Council.
doesn't make
Council,
any relevance, right?
let's go to the second question. So freedom of speech may be subject to content-based restrictions, right?
No.
It is, Council.
Actually,
Escuelas
no.
versus
It
people.
cannot be
Second
based-
question.
it-
Are all
there cannot
criticisms
be a
allowed?
content-based restriction.
Are all criticisms allowed?
No.
Yes. Yes, not all criticisms are allowed because only good faith criticisms are allowed. Is the freedom of assembly
But
absolute?
is it the AFP
Council,
who will decide
Council,
what good faith criticism would
Council,
be?
you never said that the AFP may restrict.
But your question leads
Council,
to that
let's go to the next
conclusion.
question. Is freedom of assembly absolute?
No, there are parameters
No,
as
there
well.
is absolute
But
because
those
this right,
parameters is nothing
because
to do
this
with
right
content
is
by
subject
which
to
they
national
will talk
security.
about.
Correct. Is the NPA still existing?
Yes.
Do you know who the members are?
No.
No, that's why rebellion is clandestine, right?
But that
It's something
doesn't mean
secretive,
that
correct?
they are allowed to have a
Can the
fishing
AFP,
expedition.
Council, my time. Can the AFP disclose everything?
Let's now hear from the third affirmative speaker, Jeremy. You've got 4 minutes to tell us why it would be practicable to allow the AFP to monitor the universities linked to the Red October ouster plot.
In the exercise of rights and free expression, Your Honors, there are standards for allowable limitations such as the legitimacy of the purpose of the association and the overriding considerations of national security and the preservation of democratic institutions. Jacinto versus Court of Appeals. But before everything else, Your Honors, a few points of responses. First, Negative told us that when the calling out powers are exercised or when the monitor occurs, this is something that's against the civilian supremacy clause. In IDP versus Zamora, Your Honors, when the President exercises calling out powers, it's not in violation of the civilian supremacy clause. They even stated that this is actually in pursuant to such clause because the calling out power serves to protect the civilians. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, as we are already talking about the civilian nature or aspect of this case, the two previous speakers from your house mentioned that based on your proposition, AFP's participation is limited to non-combatant measures. But is it your position, do you still believe that the AFP, which is non-civilian in nature, is best capacitated to carry out non-combatant measures?
Yes, Your Honors, because the AFP in our model cooperates with other civilian organizations. We believe that the AFP has resources to prevent or even preempt the Red October plot, Your Honors, and the other agencies cannot do that on their own. If I may continue, Your Honors. They also question the length of time of the model, right? But let's answer that. Because the Red October plot allegedly will peak at December. Then we'll tell you that the monitoring will occur until September if that's actually their problem, right? Now, going back, it's clear that constitutional rights are not abrogated, Your Honors. However, some rights must be limited to protect fundamental rights. It was already cleared out that we still celebrate the idea of dissent being taught in schools. What we don't support is the perpetuation of ideas that to dissent solely means to raise arms against the government and to overthrow established institutions through unlawful means. This is practicable in 3 levels, Your Honors. First, this is a more proactive approach compared to status quo. And mind you, Your Honors, that even the negative side didn't present a solution, assuming that the Red October plot actually exists, because they cannot deny 100% that this is actually untrue. Yes, Your Honors.
Aside from the film showing regarding the first quarter storm, is there any other basis for the government to have this or to come up with this Red October plot, or to say that there is a Red October plot? Because that's the basis for asking the AFP to monitor, right? Is there any other basis aside from that?
There are reports by the AFP, Your Honor, but we believe that the reason why we do not know of the entire detail of the Red October plot is because it's part of executive privilege. The moment that the executive branch releases the details, then maybe the AFP can no longer set up a viable defense or preemption against such plot. If I may continue, Your Honor, this is a more proactive approach because it is multi-sectoral. But second, this method is also an option for the executive as is calling out power, because we believe that the calling out power must also be exercised through these means and not just sending the army or when guarding the school premises. Lastly, we are going to prevent children from being used as pawns for a rebellious cause, because we prevent them from being criminals under the law. Before they even join the rebellion, Your Honor, which is already a crime in itself, we have to prevent them, and this is where we protect them at best. In the event that the Red October plot happens, Your Honors, at least the state was prepared to shield its civilians from the threat and joining a dangerous cause. But in the event that it does not, or it happens in the far future, at least a step has been taken to prevent such by the state because of said monitoring. Thank you.
2 minutes for the cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Shaun.
Good afternoon, Nate.
Now, I just want to understand to what extent would the monitoring be? Now, there are, of course, definitions of what monitoring is. Would it be associated to keeping track of the recruits?
We've already laid down in the first speaker, right?
It's a yes or no question, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now, would it be associated to checking or supervising of the recruitments and the activities?
Yes, if they have information regarding that.
Now, having the fact that it is checking and monitoring and tracking of the information, would the AFP have all the information of who would be the possible recruits?
No, that's why they need to conduct monitoring.
And that's why I was asking you, would the monitoring result to having records of who is a possible recruit of the CPP-NPA?
Yes.
Now, wouldn't that also lead to the organizational guilt that is being told in People versus Ferrer, that the fact that you are joining the CPP-NPA already incriminates you on the results on joining or on rebellion itself?
But they are the youth council. They can still be prevented.
It's a yes or no question, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now, would joining the CPP-NPA be a qualifier for the crime of rebellion?
Yes, because under the Thereto administration, they
yes
are classified
question,
as a terrorist organization.
Yes or no question, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I just want to proceed to another question that I want to head to. Now, we would actually agree that the AFP is not only tasked to, of course, protect the country from foreign forces, but also on internal subversion, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with this internal subversion, this actually means that it is the weakening of the sovereignty of the government, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if it is, would the act of recruitment alone be proximate enough for us to...
Nathan, you now have 4 minutes to tell us why it would not be practicable to allow the military to monitor the activities within the universities linked to the Red October plot.
Good evening. I would like to open a quote from Nelson Mandela. When a man is denied the right to live the life he believes in, he has no choice but to be an outlaw. Ladies and gentlemen, our team firmly opposes on the proposition set before you by the affirmative side. As we stand our ground in protecting the freedom duly imposed by the Constitution, this opposing team suggests to use AFP in interfering with the civilian life. This bars the members of the shortlisted universities in enjoying the freedom of expression duly granted by the Constitution. Now, I want to cite 3 points of my argument. One is it causes chilling effect. Second is that there are alternative solutions that are available for us. Third, the scope of performing such an act of monitoring alone is exceedingly broad in nature and is physically impossible. I want to start with my first point would start with a citing from the case of Chavez versus Gonzalez, that the need to prevent violation cannot per se trump the exercise of free speech and free press, which is preferred right, whose breach can lead to greater evils. The fact of putting the presence of an intimidating uniformed force inside the campuses while applying the unknown performance of the monitoring would actually cause the students, staff, facilities, and even the members of the universities to not enjoy their freedom to the fullest. They would have the fear of being condemned on what they say, which would eventually cause them to adjust the way they talk and the way they behave to avoid being misinterpreted for their actions. Second is that there are a few alternatives that would be more viable as a solution than mobilizing the AFP. The PNP is there. They have been fully localized in their stations on certain districts that they are assigned. They're very visible. They are already an integral part of the community. And not only that, but of course, they're already tasked to even patrol or have areas that they are assigned to, of course, have jurisdiction with. Now, aside from that, I would echo back on what the second. Go ahead.
So you're saying that if it's the PNP which will do the monitoring, that will be okay with you?
Well, the thing is, what I'm saying here is the PNP is already doing enough of their actions that it would be quite redundant for the AFP to go in on the civilian communities. Now, going back on my argument, I want to echo back on what the second speaker said, that on June 25, 2018, the AFP spokesperson, Colonel Edgar Arevalo, also said that on the year of 2018 alone, there are 6,659 NPA and other rebel supporters who have surrendered on this year alone. And this was through continuous efforts of the NPA putting pressure on them that caused them to be in constant hiding, constant fighting, and constant hunger. But not only that, they've offered livelihood programs as part of the generous act of the government to give assistance to those that would lay down their arms. So even the AFP themselves have actually agreed that this could be done. Now, lastly, I want to, of course, end my speech with, I thought that the fear is not really a bad emotion that we should have. On the year of 2011, a controversial case was heard on Malolos RTC, Branch 14, over the disappearance of 2 female students of UP Diliman. A witness was produced testifying that in his time of being abducted and detained by the same military personnel, he personally witnessed the 2 girls being raped, beaten, stripped naked.
2 minutes for the cross-examination.
Hello, Nate.
Hello?
Everything will be answerable by a yes or no.
Got it.
Are you aware that AFP Brigadier General Arevalo and PNP Chief Abealde agreed that their students can still rally provided that it's not violent?
Yes.
Then the right to freedom of expression is not limited because came from
I
the
guess
AFP
that was answered by my
themselves.
chilling effect answer.
Okay. Was the case you were mentioning a while ago the case of Jovito Palparan?
Yes.
When did Jovito Palparan commit these alleged tortures?
I thought the questions were answered.
Yeah,
by
you can answer it unless let's answer it.
I guess you would answer it for me.
That was in 2006, Your Honors, and we submit that it has created a precedent because the Anti-Torture Act was passed in 2009. The rules regarding the Rito of Amparo was passed in 2007. So everything that they're trying to demonize is already prevented under our side.
Palparan was only convicted this year, right?
Yes, but it's about the law, you know. Okay, did you read the Vid versus Arroyo?
Yes.
In the Vid versus Arroyo, the executive is in the best position to determine the actual condition of the
What's the
country.
question?
Do you agree with this?
Yes.
So, the list can be verified just based on the executive's intelligence alone.
But why is the president not declaring any declaration yet?
Okay, going through that. Are you aware of executive privilege, Your Honor? Your counsel?
Yes.
Okay, if you're aware of executive privilege, do you think that it's proper and wise for the executive to divulge every single detail or a little bit or even a minute detail about the Red October plot?
But we are not assailing the validity of the information. We're actually trying to assail the fact that this would cause a chilling effect.
Okay, next question. If you were a parent, would you want your child to be at risk by being influenced by the rebels?
But if you were a parent, would you like the military to be very present with your kids?
But I'm the one asking the questions here, counsel.
Let's now hear what our judges have to say about our debaters. Attorney Estrella, how did the affirmative side, the St. Louis University, do?
Assalamu alaikum. For the affirmative house, first I'd like to acknowledge, and it has to be acknowledged, that the motion is very challenging for the affirmative house. So the parameter that they set is actually commendable. The fact that they choose to adopt a multi-sectoral approach in this. The research is also laudable because you cited very specific issuances like memorandum, order, circulars. In actual practice, that's very helpful. I think the only point for improvement, at least for me, is you have to be very flexible when you interpolate. Like even though you have prepared questions, it's very important that your interpolation would be flexible enough to accommodate the speeches, for example, prepared by the other house. So congratulations.
And Attorney Nolasco, how did the negative side, the University of Perpetual, help do?
If Attorney Estrella thinks that the affirmative side had a more difficult task, the negative side actually had the easier task. But I think you did well in preparing for it, in arguing. You had all the research, obviously. But if I may comment, especially the third speaker, you have to be more formal. I like your arguments, but like don't use one. Be more formal. You have to say 1, 2, and you have to show respect also to the panel of judges. Don't just say go ahead. All right. So, but all in all, I think you did very well. So congratulations.
So now let's hear from our Chief Adjudicator Judge, Alasio Alaras. Your Honor, who did the judges pick for Best Speaker?
It was not even a tie, but we had to decide. And we have decided based on how he brought himself up, how he spoke. We decided on the second speaker of the affirmative side, Eric Carl Nicolas Aguilar.
And the school that won tonight's debate.
Remember, after God, para sa bayan. The winner of tonight is the negative side, University Perpetual.
Big congratulations to the University of Perpetual, help for winning the 6th round of Square Off Season 16 Affirm Debates. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for watching.